Then, welcome everybody to the fourth and final webinar of the PPF Career Transition Month, kindly supported by the Tom Maynard Trust. My name is Matthew Wood from the PCA, a past former Yorkshire and Glamorgan cricketer, and also a director of a property company for almost 20 years now that we started whilst I was playing. I'm delighted to be joined today by three of our finest. Will Porterfield from the world of cricket. Will from Ireland, been one of the highest run scorers in the ODIs for Ireland. Through the PCA, got involved in property and the PIN network, which we're looking forward to hearing more about, and a specialty in 3-bedroom houses. Also, we've got Tim Visser, a rugby player, moved from Holland as a teenager to play over in Newcastle. Now studying BA Business Studies at the Open University, and his focus and expertise this afternoon is commercial to residential. And also, finally, last but not least, we've got Scott Boden from the world of football. Scott's currently on a level 6 diploma in a residential surveying, and I'm going to share some insights into his second career in property development. And this is a recording, but for anybody listening on the live stream, we've got a Q&A. We'd love it to be hugely interactive if we can, so put some questions in the box at the bottom, and we'll hopefully get to them at the end. Will, I'm going to come to you first if I can, mate. Talk to us about the PIN network in particular, and if you can, just share with us how you got into the property world.
Into the property world is something I've always had a bit of an interest in, without necessarily understanding or knowing too much about it, and just through the PCA really, and Lindsay Williams, she was just looking at what interests I had and things like that, and I was talking about property, and she actually bumped into, I think it was Simon Zucchi's sister, who is head of PIN Network. It's just a property investors network. And I read his book and got involved, did a 3-day course with them. I know there'd be varying opinions on property training courses and things like that, but it was actually really good for myself to go on that and actually open my eyes as to various different things that options that are open to you in terms of purchasing property. Like one of the deals going through at the minute, speak about it later or now, is I would never have done that without gaining that little bit of knowledge. So I think, like anything, the more you get to understand it, the easier things become. But it's also then taking on the practical steps of doing things about it. So that's how I kind of got involved. Was just, I can't say I've read too many books, but that's one of the best that I've picked up, and I couldn't put it down. And that opened my eyes, as I said, the property world, and then gained a bit more knowledge and got involved from there.
And Tim, how when you're playing rugby or when you're playing a professional career, at what stage do you think about even start to begin your second career thoughts? What happened for you, and how did you get into the world of property?
I think I was always very proactive. I was very aware that you were never going to make as much money as some other professions potentially would do, football to name one. So I was always very aware that there was a whole second life after rugby. So I actually started studying very early on. The year I came out of school, I was meant to enroll at Northumbria and ended up deferring because I'd made my debut for Newcastle at the time. But I actually picked it up. I did my first year at Newcastle in business studies, and then when I moved to Edinburgh, I actually went to the Open University. So I finished my studies there over a period of 8 years in total, I think. But I did finish it, which was actually quite satisfying. But I was always aware that there was something coming after rugby. So again, just like we just heard there, you kind of just roll into it a little bit. I bought my first apartment when I was 18, when I was playing for Newcastle, and actually never really stopped buying. I was very aware that it's something that I could understand, and I think that's why a lot of sportsmen get into property, because it's you get something that you can touch and see, and it's real. and that's not too difficult to understand. So together with a business partner from Edinburgh, another ex-player, we started buying just small one-bedroom properties in Edinburgh back in the day, and we've got over 14 now, just little one beds, but that market has just rocketed because of the price increases in the last couple of years. And for me, it's perfect stuff. It's bread and butter stuff, because it's they're always let out. They're never empty, and it's a part of the market that is always going to be occupied, because as prices rise and rise, people sadly can afford less and less. So that bottom of the market is very easy to deal with. So that's one part of what I do. And then when I did finish rugby, I obviously had to do something more actively rather than just watch the bank account. So I ended up setting up a property development company together with an investor from London, and I'd done a flip very early on in my career when I was about 23, made a lot of mistakes. I made a tiny bit of money on it, but did a lot of the work myself, the wrong way around, every single mistake you could have made. But that actually taught me a lot more than I probably could have known at the time. And we started in 2019 is when I retired, with just small refurb. So again, one bed flats, new kitchen, new bathroom, flooring, paint, the stuff you see on TV really. And that was at the time very doable still. You'd make a decent enough margin to do 8 to 10 of those a year, and then the market just went bananas, and every man and his dog was trying to do that kind of stuff. So buying at the right level was almost impossible. Then COVID hit on top of that, which was hugely fun up here. In Scotland, the market just closed. The property market was shut down. There was just nothing going on. So that was a pretty tricky time, because we were sitting there with quite a bit of stock that we needed to offload. But we got through that, and then we tilted over to commercial to residential conversions, which we can talk about a bit later on after we've gone through the rest of the guys. But that's going really well at the moment.
Fantastic. We will come back to them, Tim. Scott, footballers, property, everyone seemed to be having a go at it. How did you come about? When did you know you wanted to get involved with property?
Probably more than luck than judgment, to be fair. Kind of bought my first house, and it was just like a rundown house, really. An old fella lived in it, and it was just more, like I say, by luck than anything. We bought it, we did it up, didn't spend mass amounts on it, and we saw a light at the end of the tunnel when we sold it. We made like a really, really substantial profit, which then snowballed onto our next house. So that probably gave me a little glimmer of the highs of it, and then just got the bug from it from there, really. Bought our other house, we basically virtually done the same, made more off of that. We bought another house and rented it out, and I'm very early on compared to obviously yourself and Tim and Will, but you get that little bug for it, and that little adrenaline what you get probably from your sport as well. You see, I think Tim alluded to it, you kind of see the highs of it, and what you can achieve from doing it. And then that just led me to the point I'm at now, where I wanted to, after football, buy properties, flip them, rent them, remortgage, kind of that thing. But then, like Tim just said, a lot of people seem to want to do that. So to get yourself a deal, it's quite hard, to be fair, unless you know the right people. So having spoke to a few people in the industry, and I got talking to a surveyor, and that kind of tied in with everything, because a surveyor could go to a bomb site of a house and then realise it's not a bomb site of a house, and your profit margin's massive. So that's kind of where I'm at and why I've got into the surveying route of it, really.
Yeah, surveyors are the guys to know. I think Matt's gone over there, but yeah, I think up north here, to try and find any deal nowadays is to speak to surveyors. They know all the way down. They know
in the door with someone, and they know someone, and so everyone's obviously trying to get the best deal, aren't they? And I
And
think
you
that,
can't have stuff hitting the market, because the moment it hits the market,
Yeah.
everyone is dog. And I think it's a bit like, everyone has been watching, property programs on TV, and everyone thinks they can do it. And actually a lot of people can do it. But I think what's making it really difficult at the moment is I was going into 1 or 2 bed flats, say for argument's sake, is £150,000 to buy it. It then probably needs, in my view, at least 30 to 40 grand to get it up to the right level. And then there's first time buyers walking around there thinking they're getting themselves a deal, and like, oh yeah, we can get this, we can add value. But when you actually do the numbers, so say you need a 10% deposit, that's 15 grand, right, on 150 grand property. You need to put 30 grand into, you're at 45. Most of those people aren't going to get that back, but they don't realize that if they just buy something that's actually already been done, 180 grand property, it's an 18,000 pound deposit. They're living there and you're ready. It's they always underestimate the work, but because there's so many people walking around these flats, push up the price, and it pushes the professionals out of that market.
Yeah. And it's also hard to compete with that, as you can't compete with someone that's buying a home, really, because if you can't spend more, they can leave more in it. If like you do, I'd do it myself if it was somewhere's going to live long term, then I don't mind a little bit extra. But in terms of trying to find a deal and making numbers work, I don't think
It's
can.
an emotional purchase, isn't
it? Yeah, compete with it.
Yeah.
Tim, I made a note earlier about the flip and mistakes. What are some of the common? What is a flip? What is a property flip? And what are some of the common mistakes?
I think for me, a very straightforward flip is just a refurbishment. So you're buying something that needs a new kitchen, new bathroom, flooring, painting, maybe some electrical work, that kind of stuff. And you're back onto the market, which you can do that in 4 weeks. It's really not difficult. Some of the common mistakes is buying something that has underlying problems. So for instance, in Edinburgh, big tenement buildings, you're buying a ground floor flat, no one checks the roof. We get roofs that are buggered, that's 100 grand, gets divided by 8 flats maybe, that's 12.5 grand. That's a painful mistake to make, because that's more than half what potentially could be a margin. Underestimating the work is another really difficult one, because you can wipe out your margin again, just by having, again, underlying problems or underestimating what it's going to cost. And I think the third big one for me is the order of work. A simple mistake, for instance, that I was making back in the day is getting the kitchen fitted, getting all the decorating done, and then the electrician comes in to put the wiring in. The whole wall's ruined again. The decorator has to come back. It's stuff like that. It's really simple stuff, but if you make 2 or 3 of those mistakes, again, half your profit margin's gone.
Will, I'm going to come to you next. When you're going in front loading to buy property, how important is it to have a plan, and how important for you is it to have an exit strategy within that plan?
I think that's one of the first things you got to think about, is what is your end goal. And I didn't. The very first kind of investment property that I bought, 2015, I didn't think about that, and that's been the biggest headache that I've ever had, because it's one of the higher rises. It's over 7 stories, and it's got cladding issues at the minute, and there's a lot of things going on. Now, I've been fortunate in being able to refinance it because I didn't switch lenders, and it was a higher rate, but I've managed to get a 2-year fixed on that. But I didn't have an exit strategy. I didn't even think down the line. I was just like, yeah, buy a property and it's going to be a pension kind of thing. Whereas it's actually not been very successful over 7 years. Now, like anything in property, if you can find a way to hold on to it and leave it longer term, that makes it easier. But you have to have that end goal in mind. And it's the more you do, I'm still glad I did it because I got started. And the more you progress with it, then the easier it is to get your money back out of those deals and start recycling and going from there. But yeah, you have to think the end goal in mind, and also a plan B with that. Because you may look to flip it and something like COVID hits and nobody knows, and you're just about to bring it back to the market, and you're like, oh, and everyone puts a halt to things. So you need to have that plan B. Or even like if it's a holiday let, like can you always revert back if something happens within that to a simple single let to start with, and that still works for you. I just think having that plan A, plan B, even a C, takes a lot of the pressure off. if something does hit that's unexpected.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think especially, what you were saying there about the end goal. I think some of the biggest problems we've had has been exactly the same, buying something because it's in a good location, in the end of the day, the business plan looks good, but are you going to keep a hold of it? Are you going to sell it? It makes huge difference on what you're going to spend on it, how you position it in your portfolio. And again, not knowing exactly what you're going to do, that ambiguity can really, really ruin it.
I guess this one's to all of you, but I'll come to you, Scott, with it. What business structures have you preferred to set up within the property, within the development? Are you a limited company? Are you sole trade? What would you advise, or what good advice have you had to what kind of structures you've worked in aligned with?
I'll be very honest, you're probably best off speak to the other two, because I am really at the beginning of that kind of start. So I'd be very interested to listen to these two boys, because they seem, and yourself, you seem quite successful in what you've done for a period of time. But so I'd probably rather listen to you boys and then come back to me if that's all right on that one. Like I say, I'm literally a couple of years into this, so I'd like to.
I'm thinking more from a tax angle, Tim and Will, and people who think that they may be able to just buy a couple cream off some rents. What would be the hidden cost? What would be the vehicles that would support a successful business structure?
I think it's so individual. Like it depends on your own personal finances, because a lot of people do it as a side business to start off with. Like a lot of high rate taxpayers are getting hit with Section 24 and things like that traditionally bought everything in their own personal name, but depending on your circumstances, it may still be worth buying 2 or 3 and having those in your own name and utilizing your personal tax that way, and then having a limited company as well. If you're married, depends what your missus does. Little things like that could make a big difference. Are you going to flip them? Are you going to have much of a capital gains bill? Again, utilizing your missus side of that as well, if you're married or partner, whatever. It's so individual. Like personally, I bought my first one in my own name, didn't even think about a limited company, and everything from then on I've done in a limited company. And that's not to say I won't stop, because when I stop playing cricket, I might actually go, okay, it makes sense to get another couple in my personal name. So I think it's something that you need to get personal specialist tax advice on. Like I'm not a tax advisor by any means, but understand little bits. But I do think it all depends on your individual circumstances.
When did you start your limited company then, Will? When did you start that?
2017.
Right.
That set it up. And then again, I can't say or claim that I completely understood it then. I just knew that was the best thing for me to do at the time. And
was that from advice from like your accountant? Yeah,
just speaking to various people. I do think your first protocol is an accountant, but also in an ideal world, you get a property accountant or an accountant that invests himself, because he will understand it more, as opposed to just any accountant, which is still good advice. But if you've got an accountant that has either properties themselves or invests himself, I think that's a good starting point as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably agree with you. I think, again, something you'd said earlier about what the end goal is really important, and it completely depends on your personal circumstance. Because if you're a higher rate taxpayer, which I assume a lot of footballers will be, a lot of cricketers and rugby players will be, you're paying 45% on your rent, and you can't subtract all of the interest anymore because of Section 21. Well, then you look at limited companies, then you're paying corporation tax of 20%, as long as you leave it in there and nothing's happening. And if you want to extract it after your career, then again, I completely agree. It's all personal circumstances. I did exactly the same as you. I bought 10 in private names. So I bought between me and my wife. So we both kind of used our tax allowance that way. And now that I've finished rugby and I don't take as much of an income anymore, that rent is getting taxed at a completely different and lower level. But again, the end goal, if you're going to flip and you're going to make substantial sums from refurbishing or converting or whatever you're planning on doing, if you do that in your own name and it's not your own primary residence, then you're going to get hit with capital gains tax. Whereas if you do that in a limited company, it's just corporation tax. So you need a good accountant, and he can tell you exactly what you need to do, because it just differs per person, doesn't it?
I think that's the real nugget in this one, isn't it, lads? The pay your broker well or pay your accountant well. Get whoever's setting out on the property ladder as a romantic desire, if you like. They really need to understand the real nuts and bolts of the taxation of, you mentioned Section 21 and Section 24, but in a nutshell, there's no tax relief anymore, is there, on interest, and I guess they're squeezing the private landlord, so they're making it a little bit more difficult along the way. We had PPF did a trades webinar a few weeks ago. I'm curious, has anybody got involved in the trades to sort of, have you educated yourself in the hands-on stuff, especially with the flipping or with the maintenance?
No, I wish I had. I mean, I went to university. I got a degree in business studies, but I wish I taught myself how to be a plumber or even a joiner. Because I mean, not only some of the money these guys make, but also, would have made my life a lot easier if I could have done it myself. But no, sadly not.
Will, you're smiling.
I did PCA through PCA. I did a 4-day tiling, 4-day plastering, and a 4-day maintenance course, and I'm glad I did them because it's the in-between jobs and like the trades don't want to go and do that I can do. But also, like, I was thinking, I could plaster a room and things like that. Now I'm at stage, just get the specialists in, get it done, and get the job done quicker. Like, I'm now at the stage where I think if I could do the job, some of them, but it's going to take me X amount of time more. That's just longer before you can get your place rented out. I just think get the specialists in, get it done, try and build up a relationship with those guys, have a few in your books, and then get them in, get the job done, get it rented out quicker, and the money you get in sooner.
Yeah, more than makes up for it. You
may see if some doing it yourself, and as I said, some little jobs I'll go around and do because, like, by the time the trade gets there, and it's a 45-minute job for him, it's not really worth his while. And just get the specialists in if you can, and factor that in. And it's even harder to factor that in now because everything's gone through the roof, and even labour's gone through the roof, and price of materials, everything. So be interested to see if Tim's come across that, or pricing up jobs now, or pricing up refurbs. I think for the next 6 months and time is going to be very hard.
Absolutely. Scott, you're upskilling currently, I believe. Are you doing a diploma?
Yeah. Literally just started it's with Sava, so it's like a residential diploma, a diploma in residential surveying valuation. So,
talk to us about what sparked that. When did you start thinking about joining? How did you find the course?
I mean, like I said, I've only just started it, but I mean, it's something that I really want to get my teeth stuck into, to be honest. I kind of got onto it. I don't know if obviously Tim and Will are the same with cricket and yourself and rugby, but football's kind of, you're all in. It's like if you're not concentrating solely on your football, you kind of, you're not relevant, if you know what I mean. You're all or nothing to a degree. But I think when rejection comes, it's probably the same in all sports to a degree, but when rejection comes in football and you're kind of out of contract, say at the end of the season, and you think, what am I going to do, type thing. And then through just conversations with the PFA, so that's Professional Footballers Association, they just set you like just drip feed you little tasks of what whets your appetite. And then that led me on to surveying. And after certain discussions with certain people, it really hit home. Just the little things like you get to delve into. Might sound daft, but you get this SCT tool, so it's with Rightmove, the surveyor's comparable tool, and just the depth of knowledge what you can go into with properties and stuff like that. And that's just literally just the start of getting going, really. So now I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
Brill. Tim, we touched on earlier, the bank, the money's coming into the bank, but you still need a purpose. So you've effectively got the income stream, or you've got the properties, but something in you wanted a day-to-day job. You needed something else. You talked about commercial to residential. Just tell us a little bit more about that if you can, please.
Yeah, I think it's just a better market for us, especially at the moment since COVID's hit. No one's buying commercial properties because no one's looking for a restaurant space or an office space, for instance. So it made buying much easier, which preserves your margin, obviously, because the lower you buy, the more money you make. But there's also huge tax advantages in doing so, because when you convert from commercial to residential, you can get all your VAT back on your purchases and on your labor. So if you can imagine some of the costs involved, say you spend 100 grand on a conversion, and you can get 20 odd percent of your VAT back on that can be quite a big sum. So that's really good. Stamp duty rates when purchasing are hugely lower on commercial property. There is no additional dwelling supplement. So again, stamp duty is just so much cheaper. So that's why we kind of got into it, really. But also there's more margin to be made, because commercial property overall is cheaper per square meter than residential stuff is. And obviously when you're then converting to residential, you're getting a premium on your square meterage. So we started last year, we purchased a restaurant space in the middle of Edinburgh and an office space just outside of town, which we both converted into 2-bed apartments, so about 100 square meters each. So relatively large places, but it can be a minefield, because obviously the sellers will want you to make a clean offer. You can't have any conditions on your offer. So you're buying something, not sure whether you're going to get planning permission, because we deal with listed buildings up here. So you need listed building consent, you need planning permission, you need building warrants. So what became incredibly important to me was a local architect who knew the council well, who'd been dealing with this kind of stuff for years, who can come in with me and he goes, right, well, we can convert this. It's been happening up and down the street. So there's very small risk that you're not going to get planning permission here. Because if you don't get your planning permission, you can't deliver your ultimate product, and then you're in deep shit, as they say. So it's really important. And again, we just speak there with Will. Knowing your end goal means you can kind of get the specialist in, because when you're doing this stuff kind of professionally and you're doing a number per year, you don't want to be doing it all yourself. So yes, I still do little stuff. I'm basically the cleaner, as they call me. But get the specialist in, get it done well, get it done on time. It's more than worth the money. But yeah, we've just finished those both and sold them, and we are now moving on to kind of what is the next level for us, is where we buy commercial properties and we split them into several apartments. So we've purchased what used to be a bar, sadly again gone because of COVID, but very close to the universities, very close to town, which we're going to put 3 apartments in. So we've just started there last week. And then we bought what used to be a travel agents, again, on a high street where a lot of the shops are already being converted to houses. So that you're going to get permission doing so. And we're going to put 2 apartments in there. So I'm going to be relatively busy over the next couple of months, which is nice, because you can have really dead periods as well when you finish projects and you've not sold them yet. You've prepped for all the work coming, and just in between, you can be very, very bored.
Are they all in Edinburgh, Tim, your properties?
Yeah, so I literally only work in the Edinburgh city centre for a couple of reasons. I know it really well. I own a lot of property in the city centre, so I know the market really well. I know what I can expect in terms of resale values, but also it's a very protected market. So if the shit hits the fan, as they call it, that Edinburgh city centre is going to be popular. It's going to be protected. The values will stay relatively good. I mean, even in the last recession, for instance, in 2008, when property values were plummeting everywhere, they just stayed constant in Edinburgh. They didn't go up, but they just stayed constant. So you're not losing on your investment, which is another one. If I can warn anyone on here that is listening, I don't know if any of you are on LinkedIn, but there's so many of these so-called mentors that try and charge you money for teaching you to do this, and this. I mean, just go to the professionals. Go to your association, whether it's the cricket association or the football one, and just get some real professional advice, because there's a lot of cowboys out there telling you supposedly how to do things and where to invest, and all they're trying to do is make money for themselves. I was speaking to a man the other day who, funnily enough, was from Holland also, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I've invested in Scotland as well. I'm making 14% yield on my 2-bed." And I said, "Okay, well, where have you bought?" And he goes, "I bought in Paisley, which is just outside Glasgow. You know, you wouldn't want to. It's not a nice area. But more importantly, you know, the guy thinks he's onto a winner, and the guy that sold him it is long gone. You know, he's probably made some sort of sourcing fee on it or whatever. But when eventually, you know, the economy, you know, either stagnates or declines, who knows? Those are the first areas that are getting hit. So it's really not rocket science, but just look around you and look at a market that you know, whether that's where you live or not, but just think to yourself, you know, what's a popular area? Where do people want to live? Or an area right next to a popular area that you know is always going to be okay. Because don't just look at yield. Don't just look at yield, or don't just look at capital increase. But you know, it's all about balance, really.
And is that the key, Will and Scott, to have a balanced portfolio, so that when things fluctuate, maybe capital gains on some properties go up, some properties may not go up, but bring you in a cracking monthly return on your rents? How simple or how important is it to diversify a portfolio, Will?
Yeah, I think it is, but for me at the minute, I've only got single lets, and that will be over the next 12 months, probably all I do. But for me, it's just about laying that foundation, and I've got that base of single lets that are bringing me in X amount a month, and that's boxed off cash flow from that perspective. Because then I want to move on to more commercial resi opportunities, especially there are opportunities there at the minute, and I've been sidetracked looking at things, but I'm like, right, I need to focus on just getting to a set number of properties that's going to bring me in a set number a month, and that's my individual circumstances. But again, if I had that already done, then I would be moving on and looking at small commercial resi opportunities and things like that. But for now, it's again what works for me. And you can't get distracted. I do think it's important to diversify, but it's still a longer game for me. Like, and I think it's just what suits me now and what works for me now, especially where I am. And I think what Tim was saying about knowing your local area, like obviously I'm from Ireland, but my local area now is just outside Liverpool. I live in Widnes, and all my focus has been literally within 10 minutes of where I live. And I'm talking about your standard 3-bed singlets, whether that's terrace, small semis, end terrace, things like that, with a garden. Like the demand for those has rocketed, and especially over COVID, it was always there. Yeah. And then it's just simple exit. That's first time buyer territory / all our investors, and they're never empty. Like, I've got tenants that call me and say, "Have you any more properties?" Because my sister's needs one, or someone needs one, or things like that. Estate agents, it's the first time estate agents are calling me if I've got any more properties to rent out. Like, it's just gone mental in this area, and that's what's going to lay my foundation. Now, do I think those are going to rocket in capital appreciation? No, I don't. I think they'll still do well, and I've bought at the right price, so the equity is always going to be in them. But then when I get to a certain stage, then I will do things that I do think will go up. And I think, again, that will be slight diversification. So it will be an asset that sits there that might not make me much a month, but I know in 15, 20 years time that will have potentially almost doubled, or if not doubled and some kind of thing.
All three of you guys have said buying at the right price. That seems to be the common theme. How easy is it when you see a place that you could emotionally get attached to? How easy do you train yourself to go, we've got a strategy here, we need to buy at the right price, even if it delays? Tim, you mentioned you can get bored for a few months. I'm guessing that's because you're not just jumping in at every opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think it's all about head versus heart, isn't it? When you go and look for your own home, you want something that looks nice, that you see yourself living in, that's in a nice area or whatever else. And I think the big switch that you got to be able to make, and this is much harder at the start than it becomes later on, is being able to buy with your head and just looking at things like a business proposition. You need to look, you're not looking whether you want to live there. You need to look at what's the rent going to be, what's my mortgage going to be per month. Will it always be occupied? Will it always be popular? And that really is the foundation of it. Listening to Will there, I completely understand, where he's coming from. And actually, I think one of the questions here on the Q&A was, about interest only and how you use it to bulk your portfolio. And that's literally exactly what I've done. I bought properties. So I bought my first one together with my business partner cash, and just we had it for a year or two. It went up in value quite significantly because this was just after the first crash. And we ended up taking a mortgage, interest-only mortgage, and using that mortgage as deposits for 3 more. So we went from 1 to 4. Then we got to a point where, because we're on interest-only mortgages, it's purely just money making. So you're making money every month. It's coming in steadily. And because you're making so much, you can use that as a deposit for another one and another one and another one. At some point, when you end up, at say 8, 10 or whatever, it just starts snowballing. You can buy one every year. I'm a big believer in interest only, because I think the property needs to work for you. The luxury we have in this part of the world is that property prices historically always go up. Of course, they go up and down, but over the long term, they always goes up, like many other investments, I guess. But it means that you can be on interest-only mortgages because there is not that much point. I am, however, a big believer in big deposits. So we always put down at least 25% to make sure that we're protected from fluctuations in the market. But yeah, it's a really easy way to bulk your portfolio. But then the next part of that question is, how do you do this after your career, and how it becomes your passive income? And that's obviously something I've experienced quite recently, because for years I'd never touched the money because I was on a wage from rugby. I didn't need to touch the money, so we were buying properties every year. And then when I became, a young developer, suddenly I had no steady wage anymore, and you're going from property to property. So what I did is I started using the passive income from my property portfolio to live off, and then using development side of things as a cash cow. And that's why I guess a lot of sportsmen can afford to do this, through their careers, because they don't need the money from it all. But yeah, keep buying whilst you're playing. Definitely one of the advices. But afterwards, it becomes a lot more difficult. And I guess again, it's personal. Just like Will keeps saying there. If you do have a steady job, you got your property on the side, keep buying. Great. I went the other way, and I'm luckily doing really well in the development side. But if I had to have a normal job, or I didn't have to be able to get a job, then at least I would have had my property income to keep me going.
Scott, I want to come to you now, mate. So what Tim's just touched on, keep buying while you're playing. You had a long 12, 13 professional career in football. How easy is it for a young player to get involved in the trappings of a bigger car, a bigger personal house? How easy is it for, in the dressing room chat, how much of it goes on? But I guess what I'm trying to get out of you is for a player to look at the future or look at future investments whilst they're playing, because there may be young guys or girls listening to this going, when do I start? And I suppose the best time is 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, I always advise one of the younger lads I played with recently. I said he was lived at home with his mum and dad. He's 22, and I just said to him, you just need to get a property. I said, you don't even need to live in it if you don't want to. Just get a property and kind of get on the ladder. I missed an absolute glorious, unbelievable opportunity when I was 17. My brother put me onto like a little coach house, like where the apartments are underneath and stuff. And I missed an unbelievable opportunity at that point. And if I could turn the clock back 13 years, I'd buy it straight away knowing what I think it trebled in price in 2 years or something. It was ridiculous. And that's what I advise to everyone, that it's never, you've always got to, it's the best thing. Some people say it's not a great investment at times, whereas it's always a great investment. It's the one thing what it's like one of the lads touched on early doors. You'll always see some type of form of income coming in from it. Hopefully, it will always inflate in price anyway. But a lot of the lads, they want, like you said, Matt, they want the car, they want the sparklers coming over in the champagne on a night out and that. And I mean, sometimes I was stupid enough to do it myself, like probably all of us have. But I think the long-term gain is if you can get your foot in the door nice and early. It's something what you'll see tenfold in 5-10 years time. So if like you said, if you could turn the clock back, I think all of us would have started at 16 when we left school. So 100%. I'd advise any young footballer, rugby player, cricket, any sport, to try and get your foot in the door, even whilst you're living at home with your mum and dad, because it's probably the best time to start. In all fairness, when you've not got any expenditures, you've not got any kids or missus. So that's what I try and say.
It's one of the things I think. I don't know what you guys were like, but I didn't understand any of that when I was even 22, 23, and I was quite late signing professional contract. I didn't sign with Gloucester until I was 23, but I didn't understand any of it, and I wasted all those opportunities. It took me until I was late 20s to actually understand the ins and outs of mortgages and like cash flow and all those kind of things. Now, yes, that information is available, but you don't care about it when you're 21 to some degree, and that's the advice I would say. Like same as Scott was saying, is if you genuinely have an interest in property, then I do think it's really simple to get started and understand that concept to start with and get involved. Because if I'd have done that when I was 21, 22 and had the opportunity to, I would be going back and thanking that person now, like even if it was only one or two, and picking them up throughout that. But again, it's just, I think you got to understand it to be able to make those decisions and make that step as well. And that's something down the line I'd love to go back to any cricketer as soon as they get signed up and they have an interest in it. I think they have to have an interest in it, because I think Tim touched on it earlier, the amount of people that are out there and cowboys that'll say to you, yeah, I can do this and I'll promise you the world, and it doesn't always happen. So always go to someone that's been down the road you've been on. Like there's plenty of people that have 10, 15, 20 years experience and have done it, that'll be more than happy. If you go to anyone at the top of their game in sport and you say, can I have 10 minutes of your time to talk about what you've done? It's the same that I've found in property. Anyone that has that and trusted people, gain that knowledge from, just ask questions.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for me, the thing I always think to myself when I see that stuff, because you get hundreds of people on LinkedIn, promising you the world. But if they were so good at it, why aren't they doing it themselves? Why are they spending their time educating others to do it? It's the age-old question. That's why I always ask myself. But yeah, even just on Google, type in, how do I invest in property? And there's so much information. There's so much information out there, and just educate yourself and look at it with a critical eye, of course, but it's really not that hard. It is in property. It's really hard to do something really stupid, but it's also really hard to make an incredible amount of money out of it. There's a balance somewhere in the middle where don't buy something stupid, buy something in a popular area or next to a popular area. And if it's too good to be true, it really is in property, because there's no free money.
Outstanding. Men, I'm just looking down at the Q&A, a classic one for people in property, tenants. How do you vet them? I'm sure everyone's got a horror story. There's some.
I don't actually. I don't have any horror stories yet, touch wood. I don't know how Will does it. I use a professional agency, so I pay a management charge. It's the old set and forget. So I pay between 8 and 10% a month of the rent to a management agency, but they do everything. They take care of repairs, they take care of tenant vetting, they collect the rent. All I do every month is watch the rent come into my account, and I think it's worth the money. Totally worth the money, because when you get a difficult tenant or someone trashes the place or whatever else, they will be in there sorting it out for you, and you do not want to be doing that yourself. I made the mistake of managing a property myself once, and you get phone calls in the middle of the night that the boiler isn't working, and the chap that lives there has just knocked the button with his hand, as with a whiskey bottle or something like that. It is just not worth it.
Okay. I split mine. So the local ones at the minute, I'm managing myself. The ones that are a little bit further afield, I have someone managing them. I'm doing it twofold. It's not what I want to do as managing. I don't do tenants myself in terms of finding them. So I do all that's done through the agent, and then they sign them up, vet them, do all the viewings. Then I take over from there, only because they're all within 10 minutes from me. And I want to have a little bit of experience of doing that. So whenever I hand it all over to someone else, which I will do, I can understand, I've got a bit more empathy for them and things like that. But that's just a personal preference. I don't want to do it long term. I want to do it for the next couple of years, but then there will be a property, but my next property will then be the property that pays all my management fees, if that makes sense. So it's that's how I'm going about things. It's not the same for everyone, but I do agree with Tim. It's once you get to a certain point, it becomes a full-time job if you're just managing tenants yourself. So I do think try and factor it into your costings when you're doing it. Try and factor in that 8-10%, whatever it is, and then there'll be no surprises from there. And it is.
I think that's one of the next questions as well, about how many hours a week do you actually spend? You don't actually have to spend much at all. Once it's all been set up, once you've bought a property, you've got your goal of doing it, and you've got tenants in there. The moment you hand over the keys to a tenant to an agency, you shouldn't be having to do much more than, I answer an email every now and again, can we send an engineer out, the boiler's broken? Yes, I just say yes, that's it. You shouldn't have to do much. Every now and again you have to remortgage or some admin, but it is not a job.
The biggest thing which should be taking up your time is trying to find the deals. And I think that is the biggest part of it. If you can find good deals, then there'll be money in there to do everything for you at the back end. And it's just building up that pipeline, which isn't easy, especially at these times. But you just got to think outside the box a little bit. The majority of my leads over the last 6, 9, 12 months have come from the guy that fits my windows and doors. I was just like, mate, the houses that you go to, like if you got any landlords in your books that just are selling up, they're over the game. And it's just, he literally by the end of the night had 10 addresses, like just from one landlord. He was like, right, I'm going to sell these. And when I actually met him, he had so many more. But he was just like, I'm getting out. There's another guy at the minute, he's getting out, and he's let mortgages run out, and he's ran over, and he's 65, and he's like, I'm done, just sort this out. So it's like, if you can't gain the knowledge and stuff from that, then I think that those opportunities will be there, and it's just trying to be a problem solver. But if you can find those leads, then I think that's where you make your money, kind of thing, and solve someone's problem and take away their pains, and everyone wins from it.
Totally agree.
Fantastic. We're nearly over time. We're just about over time. A question from me, selfishly. Best book you've ever read within the property game? You can't have the same one each.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Scott, you can't have the same.
It's probably the one that I'm reading at the minute from Parnham in the residential surveying. That the stuff what I've read in it, just opened your eyes a little bit to stuff what you look around the house and you see it every day, but when you read the book and a surveyor's input and knowledge, it's something where you open your eyes and you think, yeah, let's keep my eye out for it next time I view a property, basically. So probably that one at the minute. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I'm probably going to say Property Magic, Simon Zucchi's book, only because that's what really got me thinking outside the box. But then also Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, that actually opened your mind about actual money. So it's like the difference between assets and liabilities and things like that. It's like, it just gets you, as I said, I wish I'd have gotten that book first when I was 20 and understand money.
Yeah, they need to teach it at school.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Team, thank you very much. I think when you run over like this, there's clearly appetite for more. I think it's something we can double up on down the line. I'd like to thank you all for giving up your time, which is very precious, I know. So thank you for that on behalf of the PPF and the Tom Maynard Trust. I think we're going to bring the webinar to an end, and good luck everyone. There's some quick wins there with some books you can put in your kit bag and get cracking, get educated and enjoy. All the best, and thank you again. See you later.
Cheers.